In the bye week, you have to reassess. We're going to talk about the O.
You are Locked On Huskers, your daily podcast on the Nebraska Cornhuskers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, gang, DP here, Locked On Huskers. Thank you for making Locked On Huskers your first watch and listen each and every single day. And you folks who hang out with us, thank you for you everydayers for checking in with Locked On Huskers. But first, before we get into today's action, Mark Einweiler, let them know about FanDuel.
Thank you, DP. This episode of Locked On Huskers is brought to you by FanDuel. Snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $500 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. One more time, that's FanDuel.com/lockedon to kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. There's lots going on here. We're trying to figure out where this program stands in the bye week, and there's lots in play. The numbers will tell us some of the things that we have questions about, and then we will have other questions because we don't have all the answers. We're simply trying to get to the right questions. Where does this Huskers offense stand currently? And there's lots behind this, right? There are lots of things in play. So we're going to talk about the passing game. We're going to talk about the running game. And in talking about the passing and running game, we'll get into line play in both of those situations and scenarios. So that's what I'm going to ask you as we go through this, just to take the walk with me through some of the numbers that are in play for this Nebraska offense. And then that will allow us to grade it out at the end of this to figure out where everything stands. Couple of things before we get started. Click the subscribe button so you get the content. We make sure that you get this content on a regular basis. We'll start with the passing game. And a couple of things that are in play, and we get some understanding for what we're trying to accomplish. If before the season we said, hey, Billy Kemp's going to lead this team in receptions, Thomas Fidone will be second in receptions, would we be satisfied? I'm not sure that we would be surprised. Would we be satisfied? Then you get into the details. Numbers tell you one part of it, then the details give you another. Through 6 games so far and 6 starts, where Billy Kemp has been, by most analytics and by most things that you would gauge, the premier receiver, the featured receiver. And there's some numbers that jump out. Now, 20 receptions throughout the course of 6 games. For me, in this offense, even if the ball is spread out amongst different receivers, I'm not sure that 20 is the number that you want to land on after 6 games. Yes, you're a physical, run-the-ball type offense, and a lot of this is put on the burden of having 2 different quarterbacks and a third quarterback injured who are not getting full focus. And remember, if Purdy's in the conversation and Sims is in the conversation and Harburg, that Billy Kemp has 3 different people trying to pass him the ball in different situations and circumstances. Jeff Sims and his want versus Harburg and his want, the things that are comfortable to them play out in this. Also, who you're playing plays out. Of the 6 games, 4 major opponents that you have to consider, and even in the Big Ten, 20 receptions for 210 yards at 11 yards a catch, 1 touchdown, a long of 34. When your top receiver is averaging just over 35 yards a game, it begs that you ask yourself questions on, are you getting them the ball? Are you getting them where they need? Are you allowing them to run the routes that they need to? Ball delivery, all of that is in play. Where do they fall within the progressions? That's a real thing. And having lost receivers, listen, Marcus Washington is out for the season. Isaiah Garcia-Castaneda out for the season. Xavier Betts was an offseason major check and circle when it comes to what they thought they were going to be able to do. He's unavailable. He's not on the roster. So that leaves you with your number 2 receiver currently. Now, Marcus Washington has 8 catches for 175 yards, no touchdowns. That's your number 2 receiver going into Game 7. Going into Game 7, your number 2 receiver at wide receiver has 8 catches. That's 1 catch per game. It's not a lot of production. For whatever reason that is, your number 3 receiver, Alex Bullock. Remember, 6 games, 7 catches for 119 yards. He has 1 touchdown. Now, we had talked on this very podcast, we had talked about what the burden of being Thomas Fidone in this offense would mean and how it would play out. Well, it's playing out just as we thought. Thomas Fidone has more touchdown passes than the other receivers active on the roster had. He's got 3. The rest of them have 2. Thomas Fidone is the most viable and productive and effective receiver in the passing game. But take that with a grain of salt because he only has 12 catches. That's 2 per game. Yes, he's averaging 13 yards a catch, but is that is a number that requires more work. Feed the beast. If you have a beast, and if he's the most difficult receiver to defend in the passing game, get him the ball. Get him the ball early and often. Get him the ball in different places. Get him the ball early so that he can use some of that size and speed. Get him into spaces where he can be thrown open. And a lot of this has to do with rotating quarterbacks. As a coach, what I can tell you is that if I've got a young quarterback, what I want to do is I want to get the ball out of his hand through clean windows, clean passing windows, in the shortest space, the shortest, easiest throws on the field. Slot receivers and tight ends between the hash marks. Now, yes, there's more bodies in place. There are more hands in the window. But there's more room for work when there's a big target in that space, and Thomas Fidone is a big target. Some would ask the question, well, maybe it's going to Borkacher. But Borkacher has 4 catches in 6 games. No touchdowns and 44 yards. He's averaging 11 yards a catch. If you're trying to get the passing game going, the easiest way, and think of it this way, that the shortest throw in the cleanest space moves the chain. It is the best friend of a young quarterback is effective, dominant, size-providing tight ends right in front of them in clean windows. And there are ways to take that away, but usually that's with play action, because if you're running the ball and you're running zone read, and you're running option, and you're running veer, and you're doing all those things, those linebackers and those edge setters have a different accountability and a different priority and focus. Well, what you do is you attack that, and then when they leave the space where pressure comes from, you throw to that space. And if you're using your tight ends to get next level, so if I rub a tight end against a linebacker, and the linebacker has his eyes towards the running game, those tight ends should be able to fold and run behind them for open space. This exists in the system that Marcus Satterfield has this team running. But the numbers scare me a little bit. But there's room for improvement. There's room for improvement. And we'll talk about that, how to do that, when we come back to Lockdown. Hey, gang, DP here. Thank you for making Locked On your first watch and listen each and every day. I want to thank Mark Onweiler. Mark, if you would, please let them know about LinkedIn.
Thank you, DP. This episode of Locked On Huskers is brought to you by LinkedIn. Now, these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. And it's super easy to create a listing there on LinkedIn. You add your job, you add the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. They've got simple tools like screening questions, making it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you want to interview and hire. And it's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. DP, back to you.
Thanks, Mark. We're talking about where we are. 6 games into this thing. You're into the bye week, and you have some numbers. And I remind people that you can tell the status of a program or a team by the number of questions you have about it. And we just spent time in the passing game with the numbers that jump out to us about who's leading. I mean, when your leading receiver has 20 catches, number 2 has 12, and then there's 8, 7, and 4. That's not a lot. And now it's time to figure out maybe in offsetting what is in play in the passing game by the running game. The two have to complement each other, or they should, especially in the Big Ten, because if you're just good at one, if you just focus on one, in the end, the elite teams in the Big Ten are going to be able to defend you and stop you and cause some friction. Within this running game, question 1 would be, who's the best runner on this team? And I'm open to your comments, but losing Gabe Ervin again, losing 2 of your top 3 runners, and then having to rely on, well, a guy that you believe or has spoken on having fumbling issues as your number 1 pill toter, that's a lot. That's a lot to deal with. And we talked about Gabe Ervin before the season. We talked about what the expectation was. We talked about Jeff Sims being the most explosive offensive threat. But injuries have a way of answering questions for you. And now it's Heinrich Haarberg, who not only is the team's number 1 quarterback, starting quarterback, and that's a whole other discussion that we'll have in a very near future, but as the starting quarterback go into this bye week and as they compete from day to day at practice, he also leads the team in rushing. And here's the discussion around the country, and you can tell me whether you agree with it or not. But most coaches in an ideal situation, especially in a physical conference like the Big Ten, don't want their quarterback to be their leading rusher. You want him to be a factor. You want him to be able to move the chains with his feet, for him to make people pay when they apply extra pressure or when they don't hold their gap responsibilities. You want that. And the size and speed of Heinrich Haarberg is certainly a Big Ten factor. Defensive coordinators around the league have to figure out exactly what it is that you're going to do to defend Heinrich Haarberg. And if the passing game is moderate and is not excelling, a way to use that is RPO, run pass option, because it forces defenses to pay. It forces your young quarterback to make a decision to throw behind and in between those boundary setting defenders. And it gives them some space. And if accuracy is the big issue, then you're allowing space for them to throw to green or throw them open. And the RPOs in space, like Billy Kemp off a slot, or the tight ends off the edge. If the immediate responsibility is the run game, and whether Heinrich Haarberg can pull this ball down and run, which he has done more than any other play that Nebraska has. Heinrich Haarberg has run the ball almost 70 times. That's a lot. That's a lot in 6 games. But he's producing. He's producing with 3 rushes for touchdowns. And he leads at 430 yards. And that's 150 more than Anthony Grant. A running back who has rushed for over 900 yards in a Big Ten season at Nebraska. The issue has been fumbles, and the issue is injury. Having two players in the same backfield that average almost 60 yards apiece has some benefit in the Big Ten. But then you have to ask the question, what happens after that? Gabe Ervin is out, Jeff Sims is out, and now and Ramir Johnson is out. So Josh Flakes now has to move over from the receiver group back to the running group. Of course, he had the long 74-yard touchdown run, but he doesn't have a lot of carries. He's got 2. Emmett Johnson is young. This is different. 11 carries in his season so far, and then it's a trickle. But are you getting from this what you need to get? And then here's the other thing. Why are you getting the production? Now, averaging 5 yards a carry. Harburg averaging over 5 yards a carry. Anthony Grant averaging 4.4. Those numbers are productive, move the chain, time of possession numbers for Nebraska. That's not a bad thing. The question is, can you work at that a level of efficiency against the next 2 opponents? Can you get that against Northwestern? And look, there's no mystery that Game 7 is a big deal for Nebraska. It's a big, huge honking deal. At 3-3, and you can tell me whether you as a fan before the season would have been satisfied if we said going into the bye week that this team is 3-3. We would all pretty much throw confetti and say we're good with it. Some would have demanded 4-2. I was amongst that crowd. There are those that are just glad we're not 2-4. I understand that crowd. But at 3-3, you're getting some of the things you need to know. You're answering some of the questions. Then the question becomes, what will this running game be against Northwestern? And over the course of the next few episodes, we'll match up Nebraska's offensive line versus Northwestern's defense, the focuses, the schemes, to see what it is that they do and how they do it, and to see what the advantage is. Look, if Harburg's averaging 5 yards a carry, there should be space and room against defenses to throw short passes and intermediate passes. Linebackers and safeties cannot be at the same place at the same time. They simply cannot. So, Harburg's feet will help his arm if that is the way Nebraska calls, plays, and produces. It's a big deal, and it's a big opportunity, but we'll find out more when we come back. Here's what we'll do. We'll throw the break. When we come back, I want to finish up, and we'll talk about those passing numbers. And those numbers with Harburg and Sims will tell us a lot about who Nebraska is and who we think they will be when they come back. Hey, gang, DP here. Thank you for making Locked On Huskers your first watch. Again, you know how to find me. Just track that on social media. My name is Rob Branson. That's what we're going to do. We've been talking about this offense, and in grading it, I think the 3-3 record plays into it. This is not a terrible offense, but this is not an elite offense. It's basic. Currently, as it stands, it's basic. Yes, the rush numbers are better than average. The passing numbers are not quite at that standard. So you meet somewhere in the middle and say that a passing grade of C is probably correct. It probably makes sense. Here's why, and we'll go into some of what this is. Jeff Sims won the offseason battle. His issue wasn't his ability to make plays. It was the fact that he was making plays not only for the Huskers, but for the opposing team. His passing numbers weren't terrible when it comes to completions and attempts. So 20 of 34, 220 yards, not a lot of yardage for the games that he played in. But it was the 4 interceptions that just popped off the screen. 1 in the play calls, 2 in the execution of said plays, and then 3, it's the ability of these turnovers to just be brutally fatal to Nebraska and putting points on the board. So it's a unique sort of thing. The passer efficiency is right at 99.4, almost 100, versus the 116.9 for Harburg. Harburg extending this thing again. Both quarterbacks could run. One was having turnovers in full. Some begin to monitor. Some would say Harbaugh's begin to monitor that, but he's got 2 interceptions versus Sims's 4. Bravo. He's got 4 touchdowns to Sims 1. 631 yards passing. The passer efficiency, the complete percentage, is the thing that I want to circle and pay attention to, because 50 for 96, you're hovering. And the concern is that in this offense, again, if we make easier throws and more convenient throws, safer throws, move the chain throws, this is a time of possession offense. And it's a thing that they're doing very well. It is a ground game offense. It is a run-first offense, a run-first with the quarterback offense. But if it can figure out how to move that efficiency up a bit, keep the turnovers down, but get some more people involved and get them a higher rate of passes caught, passes attempt, and targets without turning the ball over, Nebraska has a legitimate chance to turn its season and turn it into something not just impressive, but productive and good. A lot of that lies on the offensive line. The run game at 5 yards a pop tells you that the offensive line is doing a pretty decent job in the run game. There's still some big swings and misses, but that's okay. They have the opportunity to fix some things over the next couple of days before they prepare for Northwestern in full. And the numbers are there for you to digest. 50 of 96, 2 interceptions, 4 TDs, 2-1 on the TD to interception. Make of that what you will. The yardage is a thing that comes into play. He's averaging 105 yards a game. Is that good enough? Remember, that's under shared time. He actually played in all 6 games, so the numbers are slightly slanted. But I would say that if you gave this offense a C across the board, it gives you some idea of how good it could be with some subtle changes and modest adjustments. They had 2 weeks to improve and to prepare themselves for Northwestern. Harburg's numbers in the passing game should go up. We hope that his running game numbers stay up and that the turnovers go down, and Nebraska will have the opportunity to actually turn this season around into something very interesting and curious. More importantly, they have the opportunity to turn it into a winning season. 4-3 sounds much better than 3-4. Northwestern's up next at Memorial Stadium. That'll be it for Locked On Huskers. Thank you for making Locked On Huskers your first watch and listen each and every single day. We'll close with the 3 words we love so much. Go Big Red.